There are so many amazing and incredible watches out there on the market, both new and used, and also both affordable and definitely not affordable. Today, I'm going to share with you 10 of my absolute favorite watches that I've either owned or had some significant experience with. Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches. And yes, I'm going to be talking about 10 absolutely incredible watches that have really stood out to me in my own personal experience. This is not just me looking at photos online and thinking that looks cool and I want to share it with you. No, these are actual watches that I've had actual experience with. Most I've owned myself, and a couple I haven't particularly owned that I want to own, but I've gone out and had actually a lot of hands-on experience with, so I can at least give a bit of an understanding to you about what it is like to actually have them in hand or on wrist. And the reasons I want to do this is to show you something which I think is actually particularly special about watches. For me, when they sort of become from good through to absolutely amazing, has to do a lot with details, quality, feel on wrist, and sort of that wow factor. It's that little bit of a factor that is in the back of your mind that may be a combination of all those things I just said, or perhaps a little bit of an unknown factor, but you just look at that watch and you go, wow, that's absolutely amazing. And that's the 10 watches I'm going to share with you today. And I'm going to start with my Tudor Black Bay 58. And I understand that this perhaps might be a slightly boring or even predictable choice for a list like this, or in fact, it might even be a strange choice for this, because when you look at this watch in pictures or in videos, you can seem to sort of think that, oh, it looks okay. It's a nice looking watch. It's from a brand that's been established for a while. The price point is actually reasonably okay when you take into consideration the quality and the movement and the brand, and when you look at other watches in that same sort of price bracket. You may also think the size is good, and for me, in my 17 centimeter wrist, it is really good. But it wasn't until I got hands-on with this, it wasn't until I actually bought this watch that I really understood that there's something special about it. There is something that captures my attention, and there's a particular good reason why this watch gets so much hype online. There is very good reasons. There's something really amazing about this watch, and it makes me say wow. Now, I've owned quite a few micro brand watches and they've all been very good. Some have stayed in my collection longer term, most have left the collection, but there's one that remains, and it always remains, and that is my Houtman Pilbara Rock. This is actually made locally, or at least the company is local to me in Australia, and that's nice, but it is not the reason why this watch is on this list today, and it's not the reason why it stays in my collection as well. This watch has a number of wow factors. The obvious one is that pink red rock dial. This is actually stone. I think it is like a powdered stone that has been compressed into this dial pattern, but every dial on all of these watches are unique, and they have been made to sort of represent the Pilbara. The Pilbara is an area within the northwest of Australia that has these red dirt, red rocks, and this is sort of representing that. But it's the look of it that really grabs my attention, not the story, although the story is very good. But there is another element that I really like, and that is the fact that there is printing on the underside of the crystal, not on that dial. So when the hand travels underneath those words, it just looks cool. When the light hits the right angle, it shadows onto that rock dial, and that is fantastic. But it was the on-wrist experience that made me want to buy this one. I thought it looked like a great watch. I thought it looked very cool, and then I tried it on, and then I thought, yes, I'm definitely buying this one because it just feels fantastic. It feels fantastic for my wrist size, but I think it's also got a lot to do with the high beat Miyota movement that it uses. That movement is relatively thin, and every watch that I've experienced with that movement tends to feel nice on wrist. But this Houtman Pilbara takes it to the next level. Now, I bought my Mont Blanc Nicolas Roussec because I thought it looked very cool and it looked very different and it looked really well made. But it wasn't until I actually ordered it and actually had it arrive that I realized that perhaps this is not an expensive novelty. This is not something just a little bit different or something trying to be sort of a little bit sort of fancy. This is actually a really, really nice watch that really captures my attention, and it captures my wrist time as well, because I'm really surprised about how much I actually want to wear this watch. I struggle to wear other watches at the moment in my collection because I just want to wear this one almost every single day. And of course, it's the details on the dial, the design of this dial that really does capture my attention. And then you flip the watch over and look at that movement, And then really, I don't think I need to say anything else because, wow, that really looks nice. Now, if you've been watching my channel for a little while, there's a reasonable chance you'll know that my grail watch is the Grand Seiko White Birch, a watch that captured my attention the day that it was released. I started seeing pictures of this and then videos of this, and I was just captivated by it. So much so that I've gone and tried this watch on 4 or 5 times. I now feel like I've had enough experience with it on wrist to really understand that, yes, it's not just a theoretical grail watch, it's actually a physical grail watch. But it is a rather expensive watch, which is probably the reason why I haven't bought it just yet. I haven't quite got over that financial hurdle yet, but I probably will at some point in my watch collecting sort of life. But the things that really stand out about this watch is something that's obvious, first of all. It's that dial and how the hands look on it. Of course, Grand Seiko is known for the extremely well-made sort of finishing and the Zaratsu polish, and of course that is also a factor about it. But it's not until you have this watch on wrist and you feel the weight and the balance of this watch. And I say balance specifically because the way it sits on wrist is not only comfortable, but it feels like it's just been mathematically sort of worked out between the case, between the bracelet, between every element of it, that it makes it sit and feel and sort of not rotate on your wrist in a way that almost no other watch has ever sort of had within my own personal experience. And how could I possibly have this list without mentioning the Ciga Design Blue Planet? This is a watch that when they brought it out and I started seeing videos and they started winning these design awards, I thought, that's very cool, but perhaps maybe Ciga Design has made this watch to be a bit of a showpiece, a little bit of a, look what we can do. We can make this something sort of incredible looking watch, we can win awards, and maybe it sort of help draw people into their brand. But it wasn't until I then actually had hands-on experience with it, then I had the opportunity to actually own it myself, that I realized that that was only a part of it. The other part of it was that it is very, very well made. The dial is not just interesting looking, but it is absolutely captivating, and the colors of it almost can't be shown in video. It's not until you have it in hand or on wrist that you really look at these colors and they just jump off the dial. But it's also a very comfortable watch to wear, and it also definitely becomes a talking point. But this watch isn't just a novelty. It's not just a, hey, look at the watch I'm wearing, you should talk to me about this. No, this is something that if you own it, then you're truly lucky to own such an amazing looking watch. Next is the Herodlin Turbine Pilot. Now this one might be a surprise for some because this is an Aliexpress watch. This 10 amazing watch list actually has an Aliexpress watch on there. And this one deserves to be on it because I talk about this watch a lot and I say this is the best Aliexpress watch I've ever experienced. But that's only a part of the story. Even if it wasn't an Aliexpress watch, it would still be one of the best watches that I've experienced. At the moment in my collection, I've got a big range of watches and it remains one of my favorite watches. And it remains one of my favorite watches partly for the design, partly for the quality, partly for the details as well. Because when you look at this watch closely, you look at that turbine itself and you look at the dial, there is something that really grabs your attention and you start to think, how does this watch only cost this amount of money? Even when you flip the watch over and look at that seagull movement, you may think, okay, that's an affordable movement, but it's such a nice movement and it makes a really nice package when it comes to this particular watch, and it absolutely deserves to be on today's list. Now, the most expensive watch on this list today is the Glashütte Original, the Panomatic Luna. This is a watch that I've only had hands-on experience with once, but it's a watch that I've been obsessing about for some time. And it has something to do with the looks, the offset dial. Somehow it doesn't look offset to me, it sort of somehow balances. I don't know exactly how they've done it, but it just seems right. And then when you get to look at the rest of the watch, you just seem to understand that this thing is rather incredible. You start to understand why this one costs as much as it does. Whether or not it is worth that money, I'm not going to answer that question, but I'm going to say it is truly incredible and it fits on wrist nicely. And although I think this one realistically is designed to be more of a dress watch, for me, it's almost more of a bit of a sporty watch. It's something that I would put on the bracelet and I'd wear all the time. I was so lucky to be able to have some hands-on experience with this one. It is on my wish list for some time in the future, but the price that these ones are at, there's only a small possibility that I may end up buying it. But what I can say is that it is truly amazing and it made me think, wow. Now, I'm a big fan of IWC, even more so than I ever thought that I would be, but there is a hugely underrated watch. A watch that should be at the forefront of people's mind when they think of IWC, but I don't think actually many people know about this one at all, and it is the Mark 16 Spitfire. This one here is one that I found when I was looking for an IWC. In fact, I was looking at every IWC, and this was the one that stood out to me the most. This is around about 6 or 7 years old, maybe 10 years old, but I think it is hugely underrated, partly because of the design of it. And if you look at the dial of this one, you'll see what I mean. You'll see the different textures, you'll see the applied indices, you'll see the beautiful use of the colors and that silver, and it just really jumps off. This is one of those watches that you want to look at under macro footage or under a loop, because there is details in this watch that really make you think, wow. And then you put this watch on and wow, does it feel nice on wrist. And it has a lot to do with the dimensions, but it has even more to do with the bracelet. If you ever consider buying one of these, you can buy these watches on a bracelet or on a really nice leather strap. Please buy the one on the bracelet. Find it, spend that little bit of extra money, because this bracelet takes this watch to a much larger level. It makes it go from being a great watch to be an absolutely wonderful watch. But I've mentioned a few watches now that were rather expensive, so let's try and bring the budget back down again. And let me tell you about the single best watch that you can buy for your money. It's not the cheapest watch that I've ever owned, but for value for money, it is by far the best watch. In fact, it might be one of the watches that everybody should own at some point in their watch collecting career, and that is the Glycine Combat Sub. I'd seen so many videos about people saying this, but again, just like it has been with a few other watches, it wasn't until I had it in hand and put it on wrist that I realized, okay, I see why they're saying this now. And a lot of it has to do with the quality of this watch. It very much feels like a luxury watch, especially the bracelet. There is something a little bit next level about this bracelet that really pushes the quality of this watch up. But a lot of it has to do with the thickness of this watch, or the lack of thickness. This watch fits so low on your wrist that it makes you start to think, how is this only this thin? Especially being a dive watch with all that water resistance, and especially when you start to compare it against other dive watches that are more expensive than this, and you start to think, why are those things so chunky when this is so thin and feels so nice on wrist? But of course, I can't have a top 10 list talking about the most amazing watches and things that are wow and watches that are almost perfect without talking about Christopher Ward and the C60 Pro Trident 300, the watch that I think is the perfect watch. It may not be the perfect watch for you, but if you're going to design a watch and try and make something as perfect as possible, well, for me, it is this particular watch, because it's the only watch that I've ever come across that I cannot think of a single thing that I would change. Because partly it is the design. It is a really good design. It's partly to do with the quality and the bracelet and the movement. It's a lot to do also with the options you have available for this one. There's different sizes, different dial colors, but it's also the price, because although this is not a super affordable watch, it is certainly not a super expensive watch either. This is a achievable watch, even if it happens to take some time to work your way towards. But getting this watch over many other watches that are much more expensive is definitely a worthwhile consideration. This absolutely has to be on this top 10 list. And guys, thank you so much for watching. These are 10 of my absolute favorite watches that I've ever owned or experienced, and all of them have a wow factor to them. All of them are absolutely amazing. As always, thank you so much for watching, and perhaps watch these two videos next.